Hello there and welcome back to the SWTVC podcast, the audio home of the SWTVC crew and the ongoing push for the continued existence, expansion, and success of the heritage scale of Star Wars collecting. I'm Evan, or as you may know me on Instagram, at Mile High Ground. First off, how about that episode of Book of Boba Fett, huh? The day this episode is released is the same day as Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. Man, I can't wait to talk more about it with and at anyone who will listen. But until then, there are no spoilers here. We shall wait to get into that another day. Last week, myself and the at SWTVC boys all sat down and chatted a bit about our top 25 lists. If you're curious what each of our lists look like, there are visual representations over on Instagram, at SWTVC, obviously. And the last 5 episodes of this show have been mini episodes walking through each list, just in case you somehow missed those. That's okay. I'll try not to be too offended. We have been having a ton of fun with it, and it is hard to believe that January has officially come and gone. The submission deadline for top 25 lists is now closed. We received almost triple the amount of lists from last year, and engagement was incredible. Huge shout out again to all of our friends in the community who helped to make this year's top 25 data collection be as big and representative as possible. That includes the Star Wars The Vintage Collection Facebook group, Bantha Skull, Jedi Temple Archives, From Forlom to Zuckus, the Vintage Collection podcast, Yakface, Vidark from the French TVC Facebook group. Seriously, if I missed anyone, I'm so sorry, but thank you all. It's just stunning. I'm so grateful. Shifting back over to this episode, the guys and I all thought it would be fun to chat about some of the more unorthodox or unique or maybe even odd choices present on each of our lists and get into our rationale a little bit. From the prequels to the sequels, the High Republic to the New Republic, and everything in between, the lists this year cover a lot of ground. And guess what? My filthy sequel-loving self didn't have the most sequel-related things on his list this year. Anyways, without further ado, here is our chat about top 25 oddballs and outcasts. Well, good morning, gentlemen. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent.
Pretty
Cool.
good.
That was great banter. Awesome pleasantries. I'm glad to do this.
Like a banter.
All right, gang. So this week, we're at the time that this will be released, March Madness will be, or not March Madness, the top 25 for January will be wrapping up. The SWTVC team has published at this point all of our personal top 25s. Don't worry, anybody who saw Vice Admiral Holdo and thought, who made these lists? We made these lists. These are lists we made. These are ones that we want. On these lists, though, we figured we'd kind of chat a little bit about them. You'll notice that each of us have some picks that maybe make some folks raise their eyebrows or scoff at us or question our fan cards. Again, Holdo was on John's list.
She should be on everybody's list, but
you know
it's
what?
not my problem.
I don't disagree, but whatever. I'll keep that to myself and between us and this podcast.
Yes. She should have been made 4 years ago, but
yeah, that's true. Somehow Black Series got her. Whatever.
Anyway.
Around the same time, they got another figure that's on one of our lists, but that's for another day for the next time. So I went through all of our lists. We've all gone through all of our lists. Obviously, we have nothing better to do. And I just kind of wanted to pinpoint a couple things that we see across a couple of our lists, a couple of the ones that maybe seem odd or whatever, so we can kind of get a little bit of reasoning behind them. I know we've all kind of talked about them on our mini episodes leading up to this one, but this way it'll kind of give us a chance to sort of bounce ideas off of each other and talk a little more in depth about these things. So let's just go ahead and get the ball rolling. And I want to go ahead and start with Tyler. I know one character that you have on your list, on your top 25, is Allegiant General Pride from The Rise of Skywalker. So yes. I just have a couple questions for you. And, if you want to just go ahead and lead it off, maybe recap what you said in your mini, just kind of let us know broad strokes why you chose that character, and then I'll just kind of ask you some follow-up questions after that.
General Pride is on my list because as you guys know, I have a pretty large Sith Trooper army, one of the largest that I know of. Not trying to toot my own horn here,
It's impressive.
but I only know of one other person really who bothered to army build these in large quantities, and that's Jake James, of course. I've never seen really anybody else who bothered to army build these guys to the extent that I did. But I have no one to lead them. I have, 2 platoons of Sith troopers and no General Pride to stand in front of them on my shelf. So it bothers me greatly.
Well, and also open this one up to all of you guys too, where don't just let me ask Tyler all the questions if you guys have any thoughts about that as well. But I do want to just go ahead and lead into it where, you mentioned that you have nobody to lead your Sith troopers, Tyler. There's 0 items in TVC that go with, the Sith Eternal. There's no officers. There's no, no, we don't even have Hux. He's also on your list.
Mhm.
There's no Palpatine, no Exegol playset, no stuff like that. If Hasbro were to make this figure tomorrow, what, besides a Sith trooper here or there, and actually in the movie, he doesn't directly interact with any, how would you like to see Hasbro support it if they were to make a General Pride figure? Would they need to make more figures from Rise of Skywalker, which I know sequel's bad, that's risky and all that, but whatever. What kind of support would you like to see that figure get? Would it be a slow drip? Would you like to see a couple things related to it at the same time?
Yeah. So, look, let me start off by saying that there is a reason why we are not seeing many, really any at all, sequel figures right now. Hasbro is going to pursue what is profitable, and clearly we can see that the merchandise from those movies, whether it's because of the movies themselves or because of the quality of sequel trilogy figures that we used to get, or a combination of factors. I think it's a combination of factors.
I wouldn't disagree.
We're not getting them anymore. But I don't think that the sequel trilogy needs to be completely disregarded as, merchandise that can't be done, because just the entire thing is toxic. The whole thing is just poisonous to retail shelves. We've seen that argument. I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think that there are some characters that would be poor choices, and we can get into that later. But I think that there are other. But I also think that if they're selective about it, it could be fine. And I think an example of that is army builders or dark side characters. Both of those always sell well. Both of those, there's always going to be troop builders like me, army builders, who, the Sith troopers and the Sith jet troopers didn't have any problem selling, despite whether the movie itself was divisive or unpopular. I mean, they didn't hit clearance aisles, and they're never going to. So ideally, if there was a bigger budget and more slots for tooling, I'd like to see supporting characters like Captain Sabrand, the sort of Sith trooper or the Sith fleet officer that was below him and sort of headed the fleet when it went to Jabimi and blew up Jabimi.
Kajimi.
I'm sorry, Kajimi. When it blew up Kajimi.
Well, there's a planet called Jabim.
I'm
in the
I'm
old.
Getting all messed up here. Evan, can we edit that out? Let me start over.
No. You live with your mistakes, says the guy who says Forlam.
Ideally, I'd like to see Captain Sabrand or some kind of generic Final Order Sith fleet officer, Sith fleet technicians. Yeah,
who also
I'd
appear
like
on your list.
Both of those are on my list. So
yeah, that makes sense. I don't disagree too about a lot of the sequel stuff, even though I like them. It's very much I don't see the harm in if they were to slow drip them out, one every year or so, which would be frustrating. It'll take me 40 years to get the main characters, but I'd rather that single pack them and just put them one per case. And, look at the Rise of Skywalker wave from Force Friday. Everybody's like, oh, the movie's trash. It's like, sure, that may be, but the figures did sell. They weren't overproduced really. And once that wave sold through, the next waves went. And I know that's why a lot of those figures from that wave do command a higher secondary market value, just because their production run was, at least from my consumer standpoint, appears to be much lower. So they can move if they're smart about it. But if they triple pack them like Lando, no. Yeah, even OT suffers triple packed.
Right. And that's why, I can understand Hasbro being a little bit leery of spending precious tooling dollars on a figure that could potentially flop. But like you said, one figure isn't going to kill the line. I really don't think it is. And as long as the choices are smart, it's,
Well, I wanted to say, of course, we don't always need to go back to the first wave, but it's relevant here because, people look at that and say, oh, sequel characters don't sell. Those are characters that had been available in multiple other forms for years at that point. At the same time. And sometimes the exact same figure in that first wave.
On the same peg even. I remember seeing them together.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, so there was no shortage of the main Force Awakens looks of those characters. Was Snoke the most, even if you didn't like what they did with the character, was it the most exciting first all new character to come out with when you didn't really have anything else for him to interact with? Maybe not the best choice. I think so. Yeah, I think something like Pride would be great. And I was looking at the costumes, like he's got a unique torso, but a lot of the arms and the legs and I think the lower skirt could be reused for other First Order officers, whether that's Finn in the First Order disguise. I don't know how well a DJ would sell, but I would buy it. But, or Hux or any of the other generic First Order officers.
Absolutely.
Which, similar to the Imperial officers on your list, they could also reuse those parts for multiple characters.
100%. I think the legs could be used for the Sith Fleet Technician, for example, at the very least. But let me get into why I like General Pride real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to make sort of a controversial, potentially blasphemous statement here.
Oh, God.
But I'm going to say that, to me, he is the Tarkin of the sequel trilogy. And before everybody jumps down my throat, let me explain why. I know that's quite a comparison to make, but let me explain why. Okay. So he is calm, cool, calculated, cunning. He served Palpatine in the Old Wars, meaning the Galactic Empire during the Galactic Civil War, the same way that Tarkin served Palpatine during the Clone Wars. He doesn't fear Kylo the same way as Tarkin did not fear Vader, because both of them are confident in their abilities and their importance. Both are clearly favored by Palpatine and were personal confidants and received orders directly from Palpatine personally. They both sort of have the rule through fear doctrine, the same philosophy, meaning that, for Tarkin, it was the Death Star, and with Pride, it's the Final Order fleet with all of the Death Star lasers on each Star Destroyer. General Pride is everything that General Hux isn't. Pride represents a competent and respectable military commander, whereas, Hux started off as sort of this badass giving this awesome speech on Starkiller Base, and then his character got clowned in The Last Jedi and never recovered after that, right? So Pride is sort of what Hux was supposed to be before his character rapidly declined. And then, of course, the ultimate comparison between Pride and Tarkin is that both of them ended up dying because of their arrogance and underestimating the enemy, right? They both ended up blowing up in battle. So that's why, to me, they sort of parallel one another.
It's like poetry, they rhyme.
Yes,
I already liked the General Pride character, but I do appreciate that point of view, Tyler. I do think that's pretty good. And if they're filling in the gaps the way I think they are in the canon between the trilogies, I think we could end up seeing General Pride again one of these days. And I think that would also boost the chances of maybe seeing that figure or boost the visibility of wanting that figure.
Yes,
definitely.
100%.
Maybe now that Now the Bad Batch is getting into the territory of some of the cloning stuff. Perhaps maybe he'll show up there. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, the possibilities are endless.
I do have to ask, Tyler, looking at your list, you do know we're supposed to root for the good guys, right?
Yeah. And you called Hux badass before he destroyed planets. You know fascism's bad, right? Even in space.
So here's the thing, right? Star Wars needs a compelling villain. If the villain is a clown, it just doesn't work. There are no stakes. Nobody cares because everybody knows the good guys are going to win. You need to have those compelling, daunting villains that are, that raise the stakes and make you invested in the story, because there is a chance that the good guys could lose or get their butts kicked like they did at Hoth and like they did at Bespin, right? That's what makes a good movie. Stakes. When the bad guys are just incompetent buffoons, there's no stakes. There's no stakes. So
all right.
I'm not talking about Jar Jar fans. Stakes, but yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, awesome. Anything else about Hux, or not Hux? Good God, Pride before we jump to the next one?
We went over tooling. John, you asked me in your notes why I want why so many figures on my list are figures that we already have.
Yeah, because over half of them, 13 of the 25 have been done. Some in only 5 POA, and we know your stance on that. Some of them, like the Revenge of the Sith era characters, they're not terrible figures. So I just want to know and we've discussed it a little bit before, but your stance on, would you rather see all these old figures that we already have just redone again, or versus new characters? How do you find that balance in the line for you?
Well, yeah. So especially when it comes to the original 96 characters like the Biker Scout and the Snow Trooper, the whole point of redoing those original 96 characters in the vintage collection is to make them definitive and the best versions of those characters that they could possibly be. So when you repack a sculpt from, a decade and a half ago, that's hardly definitive for me. But aside from the original 96 characters, when I talk about, the 41st Elite Corps Clone Trooper, the Galactic Marine, Commander Bly, Commander Cody, right? There are already examples of these iconic clone troopers and clone commanders from Revenge of the Sith in the vintage collection. We have Commander Cody, we have Commander Gree, we have the 212th clone trooper, we have the 501st clone trooper, we have the shock trooper. And so I believe that those are characters and troopers that deserve sort of to be immortalized in the vintage collection because some of their counterparts already are, right?
Sure.
So I'd like to see Commander Bly in the vintage collection, but I don't want to see Commander Bly from a decade and a half ago. I want to see a new one that deserves to be on a TBC card. Because the old one is okay, but it just doesn't fit the standards anymore. With very rare exceptions, swivel hips just ain't cutting it anymore. They really have no place in the line anymore. And there are, like I said, there are rare exceptions. Like the Echo Base Soldier. A lot of people wanted that as a repack, so I think that's fine. But for large part, swivel hips just really, they don't do the line any favors because they're not enticing new collectors who look at the articulation on the Black Series versus the articulation on the vintage collection and they're like, swivel hips, that's so a decade ago or a decade and a half ago, so that's why.
Well, and then you've also got, decades of things for these characters from older properties to interact with, when Hasbro actually made toys for 3 3/4 inch scale stuff, these older characters do have things that you can slot them into dioramas that already exist. So it's a bit of an advantage there.
Sure.
Anyway, we could talk about that for a long time. Let's move on. John, you're in the hot seat now.
Oh boy.
You've got, your list was maybe the most controversial out of all of ours. Whereas Tyler's was maybe the most like, this guy gets it.
John's is the craziest
You're
list.
welcome.
I wouldn't disagree with any of them, though. I wouldn't disagree
No, I
with
wouldn't.
any of John's at all.
That's the thing. Let me make this totally clear. Every figure that appears on all of our lists, I want them all. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah,
them
yeah,
all
totally,
in my
totally.
collection
Yeah.
like tomorrow. So let's get on that. But yeah, funny enough, I'm not going to go after you for Holdo. I was going to ask you about Hu Yang.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't remember who Hu Yang is, and I have to admit, I had to Wikipedia that one real quick because I knew, but it just had to jog that memory. John, who is this
Yes.
character?
He is Huyang, kind of pronounced both ways. That's another thing. Forlam, Forlwim, Tantiv, Tantivi. Is it Huyang or Huang? I don't
I'm
know.
going to die on so many hills.
In the episode, they pronounce it both ways, so I'll accept either at the moment. But he is the droid on the starship that takes the Padawans, the younglings, from Coruscant to Ilum and teaches them how to build their lightsabers on the journey back. He appeared in Season 5 of the Clone Wars in an arc about a group of younglings doing that process who get hijacked by Hondo and his gang of pirates, who get attacked by Grievous, who are escorted by Ahsoka. It was a very fun arc, and I think he's a very interesting character. He's sort of for the Harry Potter fans, he's sort of the Mr. Ollivander of Star Wars. Very similar vibes.
That whole little spiel just sounded like a Mad Lib. Like, some Padawans are going on a starship and they get hijacked by Hondo and attacked by Grievous, and it's like, okay, cool.
That's hilarious.
No, but those were episodes that I didn't appreciate when they came out because I was like, where's all the action and stuff? But upon rewatching the Clone Wars over the last 10 years, oh my God, how old is that show at this point? I do. I really love those episodes. I have a soft spot for them. But I'm just curious though about Huyang. How do you want me to pronounce it, John?
Either way, it's good.
Okay. Kind of same with General Pride. We don't have anything currently that this character interacts with, or that besides Hondo. But
I threw out those Mad Libs for a reason, to show that he does have quite a few characters that he does interact with in the show. He has some banter with R2 towards the end of the episode. You're right, he doesn't have any of the younglings to interact with, but
We have some older younglings, though.
Yeah, but because he is 1,000 years old and he has done this process with presumably every single Jedi who ever became a Jedi until, the Order was destroyed, he can interact with any of these characters. In the episodes, he talks about, one day I'll tell you the story of how I taught Yoda how to build his lightsaber, and in the comics we see him teaching Mace Windu. So you really can display him with, the older younglings, or the upcoming Anakin Padawan figure, or he's one of those
evergreen characters.
Yeah, evergreen. He has a long history in the line, and he's even in your beloved. He shows up in a High Republic book as a mention in one of them I saw on Wikipedia. But so he's around during that era. There's plenty of storytelling opportunity for him to come back. I think, as you say, I don't think he's super relevant, obviously, at the moment, since you don't even remember him until you rewatch the episodes. But I remember him, damn it. And he's awesome.
Well, the later seasons of Clone Wars didn't get figure coverage for whatever reason. That left major gaps. So you just said, maybe he's not super relevant. But again, with the Bad Batch and so many things that, saw their seeds originate in the Clone Wars on through Rebels and all the Filoni stuff as we move forward with that stuff, with, Rebels being a cornerstone of a lot of the live action. A lot of that has roots in Clone Wars. Does Clone Wars still count as relevant, like new media? Because, the final season was just at this point almost 2 years ago. Good Lord. But that's still fairly recent. We're still getting figures from that season, and they're kind of like finding ways to repack things from older seasons. I don't know. Would you consider the Clone Wars as something that Hasbro should still keep, even the previous seasons other than Siege of Mandalore, as things that Hasbro should keep in the forefront? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, we see it on Instagram. There's a lot of love for Clone Wars stuff. Maybe that's, the clones are obviously a big component, but, it's not just about the army builders. It's not just about the cool guys in badass armor. It's about the weirdos, the droids, the aliens. That's what sort of makes, Star Wars the Star Wars figure line go as deep as it has over the last 4 decades. You need those kind of characters. And it's, in an ideal world, we wouldn't just be focusing on original trilogy remakes and whatever TV show came out, 18 months ago in the development cycle, because that's what the figures are able to get out. We would be able to cherry pick characters from all across the line, all across the history of the franchise. And that's sort of what my list is. It's characters that didn't quite make the cut, maybe when they were more relevant, when they had the chance, like some of the episode 1 characters that didn't make it out when they had the chance. Klieg didn't come out when episode 2 was, getting a lot of figures. Holdo didn't come out when episode 8 was getting a lot of figures. Dryden Voss, all these different characters that, I think are missing from their respective movie lines. That's sort of what I was going for.
That whole time you were talking, I was just nodding like, yes, 100%, yes.
Yes, same here. I mean, that was almost my logic. I just didn't go quite as deep cut as John did on some of his. But
none of us
thinking.
ever can.
Yes, because I know people will be asking for Rebels characters, and I know people will be asking for the characters that were on last year's, bracket. But I kind of wanted to be a voice for some of these weirdo characters, like Theron Nett. I'll just point out the last Rebel pilot in A New Hope who has lines.
Yeah,
they got so close to making all of them, or Velkin. Of course, we hear a lot about Velkin, but they got so close to making all the skiff guards from the first skiff, and then forgot Velkin.
So time for Theron.
Yeah, yeah.
Net now.
We'll get Charlize Theron to talk about Theron Nett or something.
Yeah, that'll be a great get. Stay tuned for a future episode where I somehow get Charlize Theron on this podcast. All right. Well, anything else then about Hu Yang?
No, like you said, a lot of my list, especially my list is sort of just repeated from last year, since, as you can imagine, not a ton of them were made. 4 of them were made, actually, the Army Builders. But so, these are characters that have been on my list for a decade.
I think you have more from your list last year that got made than I do. Weirdly enough, I'll have to look.
I don't know the list, but it was the Purge Trooper, the 332nd, couple characters like that. Yeah,
nice. Well, it's good to see that we're getting a few of those things.
So by this time next year, we're going to get Kitster and Wald. I swear, please.
We'll have Klieg by next May.
Yeah.
All right,
Klieg.
Well, Lewis,
did you just say Klieg? We're gonna circle back to Klieg.
All right, listen.
He says Klieg. He says Klieg in the movie. He says his own name in the movie.
Is going to drive the Tantive 4 and hunt down Forlom.
With Hu Yang.
Fine, Klieg Lars.
There you go.
All right. I've got the ultimate question for John.
Yes.
Before we move on, I want you to justify, not to me, no. I want you to justify to the community why precious tooling dollars should be spent on Admiral Holdo.
Yes. Well, again, these are characters that I wish we were in a scenario where we weren't only getting 8.5 new figures per year. That's something that we all know needs to change. I don't think she's coming anytime soon. I don't think that she's particularly likely, but I'm just kind of being a voice for her, saying I would like her in the line. Maybe you wouldn't, but I would. Maybe they can do a 3-pack of her and a vac metal C-3PO for people to actually buy her or something, and another resistance droid or something. Yeah,
that'll do it.
There are ways that they can do this. And I will say, in the Black Series, it was interesting because they took the lower half of her body and made Aura Singh out of it. So I don't know if they could do something similar for TVC in reverse. They could take some of Aura Singh's parts and make a Holdo out of it. They have plenty of options.
They could really cheat with it too, is just do a head sculpt and then throw any body.
Well, yeah, I think, and a lot of it's soft goods, and maybe that was because they, like we said, they did make her in Black Series, and that they made plenty of Last Jedi figures at the time that it was released. But I don't know if she'd be mostly soft goods, if that was intimidating to them before they saw the reaction from the YouTube crowd or whatever.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be but that different from what they've done with Bib Fortuna recently, though, would it? Because underneath he could be anything, but the soft goods sell that. Obviously the head sculpt's amazing, but the soft goods, exactly the same thing, sell that figure.
So it's not as high risk as it seems on paper.
Right.
I mean, it's probably fairly high risk, but I still want
John's
anyway.
entire list is high risk.
Yeah.
He lives on the edge.
Oh man. Well, Lewis, let's go ahead and move to you then.
Yeah.
We're kind of back on the sequel train real quick for yours. In your top 25 mini episode, you mentioned having the final appearances of main OT characters as they appeared in the sequel trilogy. So I just asked, why would you choose this General Leia look from Force Awakens over Rise of Skywalker, which I have on my list, because we have at least one Leia from the other two sequel trilogy films in 3 3/4 inch. One is that Broomhilda looking weird blue dress one from the Walmart exclusive that got repacked, and then a 5 POA Last Jedi one, which I really like. I really like that Last Jedi figure, but again, 5 POA lets it down a bit. John's note on here is great. So, but yeah, I'll let him handle that one.
There, yeah.
So anyway, Lewis.
So
General Leia from Force Awakens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're talking high risk. I don't know how high risk this one would be, but she obviously did have a few other outfits past this one. But for me, this is the one that sells her character as a sequel character. It goes back to that General Leia from Return of the Jedi. It has that similar look. So to me, it's more of an action figure. I can imagine this one being used much more in photography or in setups, holding a blaster or in an action pose. Whereas I think when you look at those later outfits, they don't really work as action poses. I mean, as you say, the Last Jedi version we've got, it's a 5 POA figure. It probably does enough for what it needs to do as that figure as it stands. I don't feel the Rise of Skywalker one is. It doesn't. I know she's barely in it anyway, is she? I mean, she's a few minutes of screen time. A lot of that CGI. I think some of it she's even laying down. It's not. So it doesn't really jump out at me. But again, this one is the last outfit where we actually saw her standing with Han Solo. And the two of them had that interaction. And again, for me, the sequels. That's how I sort of imagine and embodying and closing off those two figures. And that's where I think when I said in the mini episode, for me, part of getting this particular layout, I think you'd have to get Han Solo with it as well. So, and again, we've got the 5 POA, but he's not great. His head sculpt's terrible. So I think you would need the two, definitely. But that was really my thinking. And obviously the Black Series have this version. I don't, again, it's another one of those, when you see it coming out in Black Series, you kind of think, I really want that figure in 3.75. And I don't know how well it did. Perhaps you know better than me, but I don't know. Did it sit on pegs for long? Did it sell? I mean...
Yeah. She was... Because she was part of a wave. I think she came out with like Maz Kanata. It was a couple years after Force Awakens. So it was like during the Last Jedi launch. It was with Maz. It was with Poe in his very plain brown jacket. Mm-hmm. I was probably wearing the exact same outfit when I bought those figures.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say those were the last figures I
wave.
got at a Toys R Us. So
yes, but because this Leia is also on my list, and I said she actually wore this outfit in real life, and it wasn't a Rise of Skywalker horrifying CGI floating head resurrection situation. And they work with what they got, but I don't
I think she does more in this one as well. I mean, in this particular film, she has a lot more going on. I think the Last Jedi, again, she's in it, but again, a lot of it she's laying down. A lot of it's CGI. Yeah. She has more screen time in this film, and it just feels to me like this is the Leia that I wanted to see in the sequels. Someone that is still leading the Resistance or Rebels or whatever. So that's for me. This outfit says that. So yeah.
Amen.
I wanted to ask because when you said she's holding a blaster and stuff, because the only time she actually holds a blaster in the sequels is in Last Jedi on Crate, right?
Yeah.
No, and when she shoots Poe on the Radis.
Oh yeah. So
with the stun.
Those 2 times, yeah. I don't think her medical coma gown is going to get a figure anytime soon. But.
That was my number 26. And
I know that she didn't necessarily hold the blaster in the movies. I think it's just that for me, this as an action figure looks like it could be used in that way. If you were setting it up in that way, I think it would make more sense. So
totally,
that's how I see it anyway. But
it just blows my mind that for Force Awakens, we got the 5 POA stuff, but it's just crazy that we didn't even get 5 POA Leia when she was a huge selling point for the film.
Yeah, I don't know why the original 3 weren't available at launch. I mean, I get Luke because
Luke I get, but Han was one of those later waves, hard to find ones.
Yeah, they should have been available from day one. I don't know.
Yeah, you would think that with all the nostalgia bait that they had with that movie and the marketing for it, that they would have been like, well, let's make the figures that people are here for.
Yeah, one would think.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at, again, I think with the other, if you look at Tross, I know you, on your list, you've got the Tross version, haven't you, Evan? But for me, she didn't really interact with anybody in that film. I mean, again, that is
She
partly
interacts with one of the only figures we got from that movie,
yeah,
Ray.
well, true, right, yeah. But I mean, obviously, partly because they pasted her in afterwards. But there isn't really, you think of all of those generals around her, all of the soldiers, there's not really any point where you think she really interacts. So again, for me, this one has more use as a figure.
Yeah.
She just kind of stares while J.J. Abrams' best friends kind of make puns off screen. And it's like, oh boy. Anyway.
But I don't think she'd ever sell like a Return of the Jedi Boba, but I think she would sell. I think she would be good for the line. We bought General Nadine a number of times. We bought Lobot a number of times. Surely she's more desirable than some of those figures. So
I mean, 7 years on, I still want that Leia. So yeah. I don't know. I would say, because one of the questions was, does the legacy question, or does that kind of legacy character status help her seem like a safer choice than, say, Pride or any of the other sequel figures? But I would say so. I would say so.
I think so. And it's interesting I didn't even realize till I looked back at my list, and I've actually got 3 different layers on my list, which was not intentional at all. I'm not some sort of Leia fanboy or anything like that. It literally, I just went through the list of figures that I thought need to be in the line. And it wasn't, looking back, I kind of think that, I had the New Hope version on there. I have obviously this one. So this takes us from start to finish of the 2 I picked. And then obviously the other one was the Jedi training one, which again is because that kind of embodies where I would have liked to have seen a bit more, action of Leia in that scene. So I almost sort of wonder if you could do like an evolutions pack. You have the first, you have the last. You could have something in the middle. Whether it could be Ewok Celebration Layer. We still need that one, but you kind of feel that there's a pack there that could be made for all of these legacy characters that show the original version of them going through to the sequels, and I'm sure people would buy them.
Well, in a lot of cases, of the big 3, especially, and a lot of the A New Hope characters, we do need new versions of their original iconic looks too. So, there's a huge, stunning lack of Leia in TVC. Really, if you ask me, there's so many Leia looks that are just, where are they? We've got every Luke imaginable.
Yeah, that's why I added A New Hope Leia in my list. We need that figure.
Yeah, especially now we have the Tentive as well.
Right?
Yeah. There's a lot she interacts with. So.
We have quite a few good Leias, a few okay Leias. I know some of them are outdated. I dare not even bring up the Endor Leia.
Yeah. Well, that's not me crapping on any Leias that we have. I'm just saying, it's kind of like how we only have one Padme in TVC. It's like,
yes.
Where are they? Anyway, so let's, anything else about TFA Leia?
No, I mean, again, just some of the other questions I think you asked the other guys in terms of what interacts with her, what have we got? Again, I think this particular Leia has more to interact with her than perhaps some of the other versions. I think if you look at Force Awakens, even the 5POA figures we've got, you could have a scene and put them in the background. We have Akbar. We have Snap Wexley, I can't even say it. We have some of the droids. We've obviously got BB-8, C-3PO, R2-D2. So we've got figures, I think, that you could start to build that control room scene, even if some of them are sitting in the background, But whereas I think with the other films, you literally would have her standing on her own. So again, for me, that's where this one has a slightly more advantage. Really.
Good justification.
I will say real quick, You have 8 on your list that are the same as mine, so those 8 at least have impeccable taste.
They're my high risk 8. They're the ones I'm really having a punt on.
I feel like I only have like one overlap with John, and that's about it.
Let me see. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, real quick, let's move on then to Carlo.
Oh God,
you're in the hot seat now. So your list is a lot of fun, and you've got some interesting things on there, but one that caught my eye, and it's really high up on your list, I think, is it the number 2 seed?
It's number 3.
Rook Cast.
Yeah.
So one, who the heck is that? Just kidding. I'd be a fake fan if I didn't know, but is it just a selfish pick, Carlo, because you like them goth girls, or is it kind of going along with Siege of Mandalore stuff, or I don't know?
Right. It's 100% selfish. But come on, guys, don't tell me that you don't want that figure.
Yeah, I know, I want it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a super,
I do want it.
Right. It's a super badass character design. I mean, costume design. She fights Ahsoka. She hangs out with Maul. She's part of the Siege of Mandalore. Come on. We need that figure. Yeah.
She's very cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, her armor is awesome. Like she's a badass villain. We definitely need that.
More villains are always good.
Oh yeah.
But if we get her, we're gonna need Gar Saxon. I mean,
exactly. That's why he's in
He's
my list.
12 on Carlo's list.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to ask though too: would Rook require all new tooling, or would they be able to leverage parts from Mandos that they're making, like Bo-Katan or any of the other stuff they're working on?
I don't know. I was looking at Bo-Katan earlier, comparing the armor on Google, and it looks like maybe they could reuse some parts. I don't know if they can reuse the whole thing though. Maybe shoulders.
Their torsos are completely different.
The torsos,
yeah, it's totally different. The boots are different.
I think the limbs, perhaps.
Helmets are different.
Maybe the hands, the helmets.
But then in that same vein, though, then if they were to spend the money on that tooling, they could then use that as a base for more female Mandalorians.
Exactly. Right.
For sure.
Yep. Correct.
Because I was looking real quick and I saw that, because Rook Cast seems unique, but I think they reuse her animation model for Rook's lieutenants or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're unique from the other female Mandalorians, but there are a bunch of them in the Mandalorian sort of look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, it would be nice to be able to army build, both male and female Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because we are getting quite a few to army build.
That's what I was going to bring up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this year we're getting both Mandalorians and Death Watch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and we have Bo-Katan, even though the suit is the armor is different compared to Clone Wars, but still we're already starting to get those figures. So I think it would be perfect timing to get Rook Cast or Gar Saxon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to listen to her Spotify playlist. I bet she has really good taste in music. You can totally tell. Oh yeah.
She's got it streaming as she's attacking the Capitol on Mandalore.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Can't fight in the Clone Wars without a good Spotify playlist.
I wanted to ask about number 25 on your list. Gecko, I'm barely even familiar with that guy. He's the bounty hunter from Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Is that this guy?
Oh, he's cool. Yeah.
It's a good looking character, right? I think it's super different. I love it. It's most of my list is just I choose him because of the looks. But Gecko is a really cool character too. The head's awesome, and the fact that he has face paint on his face, and the shape of his head. I don't know. I think it's a really badass looking character.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was one I had to look up, and then you've got a lot of out there alien choices, which we do need more of in the line.
Right?
Those unique dynamic, like Weeteef Sayubi.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry, I butchered the pronunciation on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really dig your list overall, even though most of them just I have to double check who they are. Not most of them, but there's been a few like Gecko. It's like, okay.
I'd just say, Evan, if you don't follow him, Gecko, the actor, Dominic Pace, is actually on Instagram, and he's a big Star Wars fan. He's always pushing, and he's trying to push to get more out of the character. He's trying to get comics done, and he's a good one to follow on Instagram if you're not following him.
I will.
Yeah, look him up, Dominic Pace.
Huh.
Sweet, yeah, I'll get into that. And then we'll get him on board, and we'll all push for a figure for Gecko then.
Yeah. Right,
yes, right after Charlize, because he interacts. We just got the droid who drives the little cart for Mando, the R6 droid. Excuse me for not remembering his designation, but in that scene, we need so much more to fill out that scene still with the other bounty hunters.
Season 1 Grief.
Season 1 Grief, Paz Vizsla, but they could fill out the cantina and. The shootouts outside of it,
that Zuvio helmet that shows up all the time in Mandalorian and Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett.
I was this close to putting Zuvio on my top 20.
I would totally buy it.
It's close. It's a cool looking character. It's a dumb looking character, but it's a cool looking character.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah, right. Cool guy Zuvio.
Yes.
Yeah, Evan, let's get into you.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So what I didn't pick one for me to assault myself about. So I don't know. I'll leave this one to you guys. Was there any things on my top 25? I'm sure that made you raise eyebrows.
There's quite a few. Yeah.
Most of them. Screw you guys.
You thought my list was weird? At least they're from recognizable movies and things.
I wholeheartedly agree with most of this list.
Nah, same here.
Most of it. There's a solid 5 that are kind of like, But
I mean, I would ask, certainly, I've only read the first High Republic novel, but Martian Rowe, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name.
It was how you pronounce his name. It's Markion.
Markion, right. Markion Rowe. I mean, again, he sounds like a really cool character. I haven't read a huge amount about him. Obviously, you're a bit further ahead. So, but again, it's that question of, if we got him, how much more would you want to see from the High Republic?
That's a tough one. You know, with the High Republic, I would look at things like Shadows of the Empire as a template of, you know, make like a wave of things and just leave it be. Even though there's so many characters in the High Republic, it's ridiculous. It's hard to keep track of sometimes as a reader, especially if you're one of those, I'm going to read all of it. But I think it would be smart to get, you know, even just a couple of the main Jedi characters out there. I have a couple on my list as well with Markion Rowe. But, you know, Markion Rowe having the main villain, you know, we've noticed Hasbro has a reluctance to make the main villains from things. But he's a little different than your run of the mill. You know, he's not clean like a military tactician. He's not like, you know, a Sith. You know, he's not wielding a lightsaber. Well, entirely, but that's a story for another day. He's just got this, you know, ragtag kind of grimy, dirty armor because, you know, he's part of this faction that's, you know, they're just these ragtag punk, you know, terrorists essentially. So I think it's very interesting, and the character's only gotten more interesting beyond just being, oh, he's got a mysterious mask and he leads the Nihil. There's a lot more to it now since we're 3 novels in, plus, you know, how 30 some issues, I think 20 some issues into the comic, and a couple of the young readers books, and he's getting his own spin-off comic right now too about some of his origins. Cool. So we'll learn more. He still is quite a mysterious character where we still aren't entirely sure of his origins or his motivations for why, you know, he hates the Jedi or why he's leading the Nihil and why he's doing anything he's doing. So
I have a few questions about him and the High Republic in general. So now that is he hundreds of years old or something? I just want to ask because I know the next phase is jumping back a couple hundred years. Are these characters going to cross over, or is that just going to create a whole new crop of characters that we are waiting on figures for?
So as I understand it, so as far as I know, he's not super old. You know, they talk about his father being the previous leader of the Nihil, which is in recent living memory of other folks that are there. So he's not super old. He's still a relatively young dude. The time jump. So they're the phase 3 of wave 3 of phase 1. It's confusing, of the High Republic is just ending right now. And then the whole project is taking a 150 year jump to the past, where there will be some characters carrying over. There are plenty of older characters that exist. Like, you know, you have Yoda. I think he's going to feature more prominently in the second prequel phase. It's going to be kind of like the movies, I imagine, where it's, you know, the trilogy, then the prequel trilogy, and then the follow-up, kind of wrapping it all together, hopefully in a slightly less messy fashion. So there's also a character named Porter Engle. He's a cool, you know, Jedi character, and we're going to get to learn more about his younger days, like peak Jedi days, because he's an old Santa Claus dude in the current books that we just read. So we'll kind of get to learn more of why he has this, you know, crazy badass reputation, and we'll maybe learn more about Markion Rowe's people and maybe learn more about his lineage and what inspired where he came from to be so anti-Jedi, anti-Force.
Okay.
So,
and then my other question was, so I know they've sort of had a hesitance over the years to do novel figures because obviously it's not a visual format and you can't really see what the characters look like outside of covers or, you know, fan art or whatever. Do all these characters also fit in the comics? Or like, are they also represented more visually? Because that might give them a better chance of.
So, what was it that they said?
Like a 1% better chance of getting made.
What I wonder is, you know, with Shadows of the Empire, I mentioned that because it was the movie without the movie. It was all the merchandising, it was all the stuff, but you know, they had to come up with the characters. With the High Republic stuff, it's been a story group in Lucasfilm working on all of this for a couple of years now. They've been mapping it all out. It's all interconnected, Marvel style. Right. All the characters, you know, they have visual representation insofar as that they have been officially all been pretty much imagined in some form consistently throughout the comics and promotional art. Like they make posters for the books. So we know what they all kind of look like. And I think the first book was January of 2021. but we saw the characters in the summer of 2020. So it's kind of a couple years now that we've spent being able to visualize and kind of sit on these, how these characters look and kind of get a feel for that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I know that this is something that John would probably bring up, but I'm going to beat him to it. Certain characters that belong to, teams and themes, right? Certain releases have been borderline frustrating, right? Because we got one Knight of Ren. So when you look at your list and you see one Visions figure or a handful of High Republic figures, it's like, okay, let's imagine that they do actually make one of these. Isn't that kind of just going to be extremely frustrating, though?
With High Republic, yes. It's one of those, if they only made Marchion Ro, but didn't make a single Jedi even, just to even stand next to him or maybe fight with, even if they don't necessarily fight in the book, that would be frustrating. Whereas with Visions, I know you guys called out Ronan in specific, or in particular, is Visions, being an anthology sort of series. The Ronan himself is kind of the face of Visions for me. I would, of course, love it if they made the Sith bandit leader that he fights from that episode, The Duel. But if they were to just make the Ronan and he was the only Visions figure that they made, I would still be satisfied with that. I wouldn't be as frustrated. It would very much be like, hey, Visions is now among the pantheon of what's in TVC. Even if it's just one figure, it's one cool character design.
Yeah.
So.
I mean,
that's what I was wondering, because
I was going to say, I'll add to that in terms of how I picked my own though as well, because again, I picked one Rebels or one Rebels figure, a couple of Bad Batch figures, on the basis that it would be a bit of a spark that ignites the next lot. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't remember the quote. But yeah, it just I guess there's two ways of looking at this, isn't there? How do you look at this list? If you looked at this list on, Hasbro said, right, we're going to make 25 new figures. What 25 do you want to see? This is what I've got. And that's where my list starts from. But what if Hasbro said, right, we're only going to make 25 more figures. This is it. We are stopping. We're not making any more. This is all you're going to get. Then I guarantee my 25 would be very different, because I thought it on the basis of this will lead into that, not this will finally complete these things. So that's my take on it anyway.
God, that would be incredibly difficult.
25 out of many,
yeah, and that's kind of teams and themes complete the crew sort of stuff. With these top 25 lists, and even March Madness, ultimately, it's not what we want to see it end with, like you were just saying, Lewis. It was very much like, well, let's get the creative juices flowing. Where are the priorities generally going? Like, hey, it looks like there is still a bit of pent up demand for just even a couple select sequel figures here and there. We want more across the saga of being able for Hasbro to not be so scared to revisit more than the OT and whatever the new TV show is, as John was saying.
Yes.
Like, go deeper. Don't be afraid to kind of, explore it all. And who knows, they might be surprised. A character could start selling well that they didn't even, anticipate, and so it would behoove them to kind of continue that mini beat, even if it again is a slow drip across a couple of years of, hey, we noticed the High Republic thing is kind of taken off, we tried making a figure, it worked out all right, maybe let's throw another one out there next year. So I don't know.
I mean, the Acolyte is set in that era, correct?
So the Acolyte is set towards the tail end of that,
right? So that could also be one of the ways that they can justify bringing characters and more figures from that era.
Yeah,
definitely.
Potentially.
I wanted to ask about Visions again, because we've seen some statues, and we've seen a couple, I think they're from SH Figuarts, or I forget who exactly is making them.
Yeah, this is the Figuarts one.
Of the twins. But so those are very stylized, and they look like, the anime designs. Whereas Vintage Collection takes either fully realistic interpretations of animated characters like Maul and Ahsoka with a little bit of animated styling occasionally, or they'll do like they did for the droids and the Tartakovsky micro series Clone Wars figures, where it's realistic sculpting but animated paint schemes. How would you want to see it? Because Visions, each episode is so visually distinct.
Yeah.
And even Ronan is black and white and red all over. So how would you like to see that
Well,
would you want a realistic version of him, or would you want what's on screen on your shelf?
First off, I would want an animated card back with, a still from the show.
Okay.
But figure-wise, I actually wouldn't mind if it was a realistic-ish interpretation. Maybe if they wanted to get a little, kind of like that Mall Ahsoka in between sort of style. So he fits in with the aesthetic of TVC. But then again, even if I'm just asking for one Visions figure, which I would just be happy with, is just the one and done. It doesn't need to fit with anything else really, since, lone wolf character.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sad if they did, give him kind of like the anime style head or whatever. That'd be cool. But I would like to see it done realistic deco. But then for them to either offer a chase version, I would love more, random things, or a variant exclusive or something of just the black and white version.
That would be awesome. And another way to get more mileage out of that sculpt.
Right. So,
I mean, it's just it's a cool looking character. I did enjoy that. He's got an entire novel about it. I enjoyed that novel quite a bit. It was a lot of fun to read. It expands more beyond the episodes. So,
Visions,
not canon. So
I only just finished Visions, and it was very cool. And, some of these things I just kind of have to compartmentalize in my brain of, we're definitely never going to get figures from that, or, so I can hold on hope for Klieg and Holdo and Kitster and the real characters we're going to get.
Ronan, and that's the thing, is of course I'd like more figures from Visions, but we just don't live in the world that there's room for all these figures, unfortunately. Visions is super low down on my priorities, ridiculously low, but the Ronan himself was one that I felt justified being on my list, just because, it can be a standalone character, and it's a cool design. I just say
really
that it's cool.
He's reminiscent of a samurai, which it just screams Jedi. I get it. You know? So
I mean, literally a Ronin. They named him what he is, for God's sake.
Right.
Yeah. So I just think it would be fun, and at least just a nod where I don't believe there should be a single media property that isn't even somewhat represented in the vintage collection. Every part of Star Wars should be treated valid in the vintage collection,
except Resistance. We can skip that.
Well, yeah. Hey, I wouldn't be. You know what? I would take at least one.
I would. I'll take.
Wait, sorry. Except for what? What did you say?
Resistance.
I would.
As long as if they made a ship, I would get Resistance figures.
Justice for Niku. We need a Niku figure, right?
But Ronin, would you not say that he sort of sits almost in the same category as Jackson, where he's that? I mean, Jackson we've been asking for decades, but again, he hasn't got a huge amount that goes with him and around him, perhaps more so now than ever. But he still feels like, I think if he came out, I think this is the problem with a lot of Black Series collectors, is they've got him or haven't got him because they just look at him and go, what am I going to do with him? And that's the danger, isn't it? I think with some of these figures that just sit on their own.
Yeah, some would be novelty.
Jackson works with Han and Chewie in the comics and stuff, and he interacts with Lando now and more recent stuff. So Jackson is a great choice.
I would take Jackson. Don't get me wrong. I like Jackson, but
we do need him.
Yeah, you wonder what you do with him though.
And I think with Black Series, there's more. As someone who buys both, as Evan and I have said, it works as a figure showcase lines where you're able to put one or two figures that don't necessarily need to fit together, but they look cool on a shelf.
Yeah.
Whereas vintage is obviously about the world building. If you get one, you're going to want to build out the whole scene around them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, with mine, some of it is scenes that are 99% of the way there, but need one or two items to just finish it off and say, okay, that scene is done,
Your number 25 pick being the Merrick's Astro Droid, who doesn't even have a name or number, but we have the X-Wing. We have Merrick.
The X-Wing with a big old empty slot. And we still have, Kit Fisto's Astromech Droid is another one where they made his ship a decade ago, and we still don't have that figure. Shout out to Kit Fisto's Astromech Droid. The other one, they made his other Astromech Droid from Legends, but not the Clone Wars one.
These days, though, you feel that's more likely to come out in the Disney pack, surely.
For sure.
You would have thought, anyway.
Disney, you're our only hope.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the record, I know I said I had to look up quite a few of these characters we mentioned during the episode today. I promise I'm not really that clueless, although I can't really excuse myself for the whole Klieg nonsense. I'm so sorry and deeply embarrassed. Anyways, the top 25 submission month of January was a ton of fun. Seriously, it is hard to believe it's already over. But now it's time for us to compile all this data so that we can get the ball rolling on @SWTVC March Madness, which is only a few short weeks away. Stay tuned because we are super excited, and you should be too. Remember, Hasbro is watching, in an unofficial capacity, of course. Speaking of Hasbro, word just came down earlier this morning that Fan First Friday, well, not Fridays, Fan First Wednesdays are returning. The Star Wars team will be doing a live stream chatting about some reveals, including for TVC apparently. So save the date, Wednesday, February 9th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Maybe a reveal could have something to do with these final episodes of Book of Boba Fett. Time will tell. Alrighty, gang. Well, that does it for this episode of the SWTVC podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, join the conversation there, and if you get a chance, maybe check out the link in our bio and rate and review the show. As always, back TVC, keep 375 alive, balance the scales Hasbro, finish the 96, and may the Force be with you.